Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Bryant and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Bryant Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin! Is that ever going to get old? For you, maybe, but not for me. I just think that's funny, and I have to thank you every time I do it. So what's happening, man?
We've created a monster here. I learned something about you today in our pre-recorded banter back and forth.
Oh, no.
So we were talking about your life in sales right now, that you are involved in that. And I had learned from talking to Julie earlier that sales of Spanx, are you really doing that? That's what I heard. Are you selling?
Well, I'm doing a wear test right now.
You are. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Katie.
That was not what you thought I was going to say, right?
No, not at all. Sometimes we just make stuff up to help try to embarrass the other person, and sometimes it works, and sometimes Bryant says things like that, and
and it backfires on you.
Yes, it does. But
yeah. So how are you, man?
I'm doing wonderful. Absolutely great. Yeah, all is well.
How about you, Katie? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm admiring your fireplace and enjoying it, even though I'm down here in Florida and it's freezing because it's in the low 70s. So, I would love to have a fire right now.
I'd love to have some low 70s right now.
Yes. Yes. I think it was 36 when we woke up this morning.
Oh.
So it's still winter here, at least for a few more days.
Yeah, they're opening my pool next week, so it's surely going to start freezing again.
Yes, it will.
I actually think it's supposed to be 79 the day they open it.
It's funny.
We'll
I
see.
kind of forgot about your pool because it's not open in the winter.
Yeah, we don't go in the pools in the 70s. It has to be in the 90s up here for it to be warm enough to go in the pools.
You have a pool, Katie?
I do not have a pool, which means I do not have to take care of a pool, but I have a daughter and friends who have a pool, which means they take care of it and I get to swim in it. So it's like having a boat, I don't have a boat, but I have friends who have boats. So that's even better.
Right. And you have more money as a result.
Exactly.
That giant hole in the water.
Yeah, no doubt.
Is not one that you pour your money into.
So Kevin, we have to be on our best behavior tonight.
Okay.
There's a lady in the house.
Okay.
Okay, where?
Yeah. Speaking of a lady in the house, who is our guest tonight?
Our guest tonight is Dr. Katie Nall, and we are very excited to have her here. She is, and these are her words, beardless and wise. She is a two-time TEDx speaker, a Florida mathematician, and she is very passionate about helping people. And she's created a program that helps people eliminate waffles in their life. And I'll let you talk more about what that acronym WAFFLES actually stands for. You're also an EFT practitioner, and I'm sure you'll share some info and maybe even do a demonstration about what EFT is a little bit later. So please, anything else that you want to share with our folks about who you are? Dr. Nall, Katie, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, first of all, Bryant and Kevin, thank you so much for inviting me. This is an honor and a pleasure to be on your amazing podcast. I guess the other things you need to know about me is that, like you guys, I have a background, not me personally, but my family in the armed services. So I want to say thank you for each of your services. And I'm a horrible housekeeper and a worse cook. And I have no desire for rehabilitation. So I know that your podcast is all about being better. So I just want to ask you, try not to fixed me that way. So
I look at the, being better in the areas you want to be better. I don't want to be better at shaving.
yeah.
I have no desire to be better at shaving. I've done that.
You've been told to do that a good bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So WAFFLES are an acronym I came up with because when I first learned about tapping, I would go up to complete strangers in the street and take them by the shoulders and say, I know you have a problem and I can fix it. And they would kind of back away and be a little terrified.
I think that's a normal reaction.
Yeah, exactly. And so I realized I was going to have to calm down, which for me is challenging. And so I thought, well, I'll just tell people that, look, I can use tapping to help you. And they all wanted me to dance. And I don't tap dance. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. And finally, I realized that the clients that I'd been helping for the last 12 years all were worried or anxious or, had a lot of fears. And because I like playing with words, I was like, wait a minute, I wonder if I can take those together and come up with something. And so I threw all the ingredients together and ended up with WAFFLES. So what I do is I help people dissolve their WAFFLES, dissolve their worries, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, and stress. And as it turns out, as the person who defined stress, Dr. Hans Selye, said, the only time you don't have stress is when you're dead. So I have a lot of clients.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. I love it. And that's a very catchy acronym, right? Because people might adversely react to that because, some people don't want to dissolve WAFFLES unless it's in their, digestive tract. But that's cool because it's easy to remember. And who wants, literally all those things you just laid out there, who wants to hold on to any of them?
Right. None of it. So, so I work with people and I use tapping. It started when I was in my mid-50s when I decided to go back to school to earn my Ph.D. And I was working at a college at the time, and a Ph.D. had value there. And I said, I'd really like to get my Ph.D. I had met so many students that were coming through my office. I was in admin, who had one class left to finish. And I said, that's great. Let's get you registered so you can graduate. And they would break out into a sweat. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, well, it's, and they would stumble it out. And finally it came out that it was a math class. And I'm like excited. I said, that's great. You saved the best for last. Well, they didn't feel that way at all. So I wanted to help those students overcome their fear and anxiety about math. And in talking to them, I realized I was doing research anyway for my dissertation. It was in math education. And so I thought, well, I'm going to find out how do you get rid of the fear and anxiety about math and test taking. I did all this research, looked everywhere, and I found nothing. However, I recognized it as a word problem. And as you two know, in a word problem, what do? You look for what is significant. And what was significant was, how do you relieve fear and anxiety? So I dropped the math part, and that was in 2010. I attended Nick Ortner's 10-day tapping summit. He does it every year, and watched all 10 days, bought the book, bought the DVD, taught myself. And in that summit, they talked about how to get rid of fear and anxiety about finances, about relationships, about careers. Nobody mentioned math. Nobody mentioned tests. So I had no idea if this was going to work or not. But the students were desperate. And you guys have been in business long enough that desperate clients are absolutely the best, right? Because they will do anything. So I would line the students up. I'm like, look, I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but let's just try this. So I was showing them how to tap on themselves and saying the words the right way. And one by one, they were coming back and saying, I think I'm passing. Well, Kevin and Bryant, I wasn't sure who was more surprised. Was it them or me? Because I had no idea if it worked or not. So that's when I did my first TEDx talk to kind of share the idea. And we talked earlier about how important it is to to share material, share information that other people may have defined or shown. And so I want everybody to know about tapping. I want everybody to know how to dissolve their waffles. So if one of you are game today, I'm happy to lead you through a tapping session so you can kind of experience it yourself. But that's how I got into it.
Does it have to be just one of us? Because I'm certainly willing, but I don't want Kevin to be left out.
No, I'm good. I mean, but
We
I don't know.
we will not leave Kevin out because there's actually something called borrowing benefits. So Bryant, if you want to do it, we'll do a session with you. And Kevin, what we'll ask you to do is to tap along with us and repeat whatever we're going to repeat, even though it may not be your issue. And you may actually feel an energy shift, and you may not, but in tapping along and repeating along with Bryant, you're actually supporting him emotionally and energetically.
All right. I'm in full support of you, Bryant, and I will go along with it. Absolutely.
Great. So just let me know when you want to start, and I would love to do this.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, great. Okay, so the way this goes is we tap on 8 different parts on our body. This is a basic tapping. There's a lot of other versions of it, but this is the simple basic version. And I'll ask you about 6 questions. So let me ask the questions first. Then I'll show you where we're going to tap, and we'll tap without the words just so you're familiar with it. And then we'll add words. Does that sound okay, Brian?
Absolutely. Is pipe smoking allowed while this is going on?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a stress reliever.
I understand. Yeah, my grandfather was a big pipe smoker. In fact, I have his thermidor. Still have his glass thermidor in my bathroom.
Nice.
So the questions are: in the last 24 to 48 hours, have you had anything, Bryant, that's happened that has triggered any waffles? Anything that's caused you any worry, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, or stress?
Yes.
Okay. Now here's the beauty of tapping, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the clinical studies afterwards. If you want to share what that experience was, you can, but you don't have to. Would you like to share?
Yeah, and it actually, does it matter if it was a little longer than 48 hours ago?
No.
So I want to share this full disclosure, right? So I had, and I'm sharing this because, you know, I'm certainly not looking for any sympathy from anybody. I want other people to be aware of it, right? Because they might have similar things going on and they need to figure out what's going on. So I had a little medical situation that occurred about a week ago where I experienced what they call a near syncope, right? Where you almost pass out. Fainting is syncope, I guess, and syncope is the technical. See, I learned a new word that Sunday. The unfortunate thing is I just happened to be riding my motorcycle at the time. Now, I'm glad I was by myself and I wasn't riding in a pack of motorcycles and run the risk of taking a bunch of other people out with me. I was able to safely get my motorcycle off to the side of the road and basically just flop over into the ditch. Bike wasn't injured. I wasn't injured. Just lightheaded, never passed out, but very unnerving situation.
Yeah.
And so, I still don't know what caused it, right? So I called the rescue squad. They came out, they took my vitals, and there was nothing alarming. Blood pressure was a little elevated, sugar was fine. So they offered me, to take me to the ER if I wanted to go. And I said, yeah, absolutely. This is not normal. I want to know what's going on here.
Right.
The best time to figure out, if I've had a cardiac incident or something like that is right then, right? While the trail is still there.
Yeah.
And so I went to the ER, and the good news is none of that happened, right? So no evidence of any cardiac incident, nothing present physically that was obviously wrong. Blood tests, everything came back fine. So that's the good news. The bad news is we don't know what caused this. And so, there's been a little anxiety associated with the unknown there, and having to change some of my, typical habits and so on, like riding my motorcycle. And I'm not sure I want to do that right now. I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm certainly not going to do that in a pack until I figure out what's going on, or at least have a sustained amount of time of not having a repeat incident. Because certainly don't want to put anybody in jeopardy. But I've got some tests coming up and so on, but that's something that is definitely causing me some angst.
So Bryant, when you explained that situation, I thought of a lot of different things that would be causing your angst and your anxiety. Is it because you don't know what it is? Is it because it happened and you had to stop? Is it because you can't ride until you know it? What exactly is the one thing that's causing the anxiety and the angst? Can you pinpoint that?
Yeah, I think the one thing is not knowing,
Not
not
knowing.
knowing exactly what it is. I mean, we have kind of narrowed down there because there's been when I think back about 4 years ago, there was a similar incident that happened. And then just a day or so ago, I had a mild repeat of the same thing. And the common denominator that we've established in all three of those incidences is food intake. Like I was hungry and maybe had not had enough to eat and been more active, and so metabolism was jacked up or something. But again, the blood test didn't show that day.
Right,
So,
right.
but the biggest thing is not knowing, right? So,
Not knowing.
if I
Okay.
knew it was the hunger thing, then I could just manage for that and develop habits so that I don't put myself in that predicament ever again.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
But yeah, I want to know. I want to know what's up with this. And like I said, we've got
Okay.
some more tests coming up. But
Okay, so the event that we're talking about is not knowing what caused that, and I'm not going to mispronounce the phrase, but not knowing what caused that near faint last week, right?
right.
Okay. And when you think about that right now, Bryant, today in this moment, what emotions coming up when you think about that you don't know what actually caused that?
Well, I think there's definitely fear associated with it because I don't want it to happen again. And I remember it was a very unnerving experience. It was like somebody was turning the lights out. If anybody's ever been choked out with a carotid choke or something like that, it's that kind of feeling where it's like somebody's got the dimmer switch on, their hand on the dimmer switch, and they're just turning the lights out. And
Okay.
they never went all the way out, but man, it was not a fun experience, and especially not being on a motorcycle.
Right. So thinking about it right now, from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes, where do you feel that fear when you think that you don't know what caused that?
So it's it bounces back and forth between my head and my heart.
Okay, that's
Because
good.
in my heart it's a fear, and in my head, I'm trying to rationalize what happened and figure out, was it the hunger thing, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it kind of bounces back and forth between those two.
Okay. And from 0 to 10, where 0 is like, oh, no big deal, it'll work itself out, and 10 is the most fear you've had your entire life. When you think about how much fear you have about not knowing what's causing this, from 0 to 10, what number would you give it?
So it's not super high. I'd say maybe a 4 or 5.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because I don't. I also have the mindset that worrying and letting that stuff get out of control is not healthy.
Right.
So while it's something I'm certainly conscious of and concerned about, I don't know that it's keeping me up at night per se.
Okay. And is this a true statement? Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I ask you if that is true is because when I ask you to repeat words, I'm going to ask that everything I ask you to repeat is true for you. So if I say something like you said, it was a fear in your head and your heart, and if I said, Bryant, you feel anger or some other thing, and I put it in a different place, will you repeat back what's true for you?
Sure.
Okay, good. And the last thing is, I guess that's the last thing. Okay. Now, Kevin, if you want to tap along, that'll be great. We're going to tap just on the spots so you kind of have an idea of what we're going to be tapping, and then we're going to add the words. Is that all right with everybody?
I'm good. Works for me.
Okay. You can start with either hand, right or left hand. I'm using my right fingers to tap on the side of my left hand, and it's between my wrist and my little finger, and we're going to tap right there. You guys got that right. When we tap there, I'm going to have you repeat sentence 3 times. And what's interesting about this is that we're going to bring out the negative, which threw my husband terribly when I first started on this. I'll tell you about that later. And the next spot that we're going to tap is right on the crown of your head, on the top of your head. And you can use your right hand or your left hand or both. It doesn't matter. If you want to do a monkey move, you can do that. And then I'm going to come in for a close-up above your nose, right on the edge of your eyebrows. And again, you can use your right hand or your left hand or both. It doesn't matter. And then on your temple, between your edge of your eye and your hairline, again, you can use one hand or the other or both. And then the next spot is where I keep all my bags for a quick getaway, and that's under your eyes. You're going to tap there, either one hand or the other or both. And then we tap under your nose. And then under your lips, above your chin. You guys got some hair there. And then have your palms facing you and cross them at the wrists, and you're going to go right into your collarbone. And breathe while you're doing there. Turns out breathing is a really good idea during, tapping. And then the last spot is about 4 inches under your arm, and you just give your ribs a good tapping. And again, you can use one hand or the other, or you can give yourself a hug and do both, or you can come in from the side, just as long as you're tapping on that point. So those are the 8 points. Do you have any questions so far?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So now we'll add the words. So Bryant, you correct me if I'm saying anything that's not true, and Kevin, you can tap along. So on the side of the hand, we'll tap and say, even though.
Even though.
When I think about what happened last week.
When I think about what happened last week.
I have all this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
I have all this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
And then we're going to repeat that a couple more times. Even though.
Even though.
There's this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
There's this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
Every time I think about what happened last week.
Every time I think about what happened last week.
And how I don't know what caused it.
And how I don't know what caused it.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Even though.
Even though.
They ran all those tests.
They ran all those tests.
And I still don't know what caused it.
I still don't know what caused it.
And it gives me so much fear of bouncing between my head and my heart.
And it gives me so much fear bouncing between my head and my heart.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
And then on top of your head, tap and say, this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
This fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
Above your nose on the edge of your eyebrow, this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
This fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
And then on your temple, on the side of your eye, between the eye and your hairline, this fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
This fear that's bouncing between my head and my heart.
Then under your eyes, this fear that bounces between my head and my heart.
This fear that bounces between my head and my heart.
Under the nose, this fear that bounces between my head and heart.
This fear that bounces between my head and heart.
And under the lips, this fear that bounces between my head and heart.
This fear that bounces between my head and heart.
Across your wrists, on your collarbone, this fear that bounces between my head and heart.
This fear that bounces between my head and heart.
And then thump on your ribs. This fear that bounces between my head and my heart.
This fear that bounces between my head and my heart.
And then I have my clients put their hands on their shoulders and blow all your air out like a cartoon character, kind of like the Minions, and goes.
I don't know if I can do that. I can't. It's funny. That's a different story. I don't know if I can actually physically do that. I don't know. My lips won't do that. So,
Just do the exercise.
Yeah. Is that it?
That's it.
That's
so
it.
How do you feel, Bryant?
Good.
When you think about the fact that you don't know what caused that last week, the fear between 0 and 10, where is it now?
Honestly, I'd say it's in the same area, maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So there could be other aspects about it. I had a client that was 6'4", a retired Air Force officer who was working on a ranch, and he came to me because he hated spiders. And we cleared his hatred of spider webs. He just hated going, he's working on a ranch. It's filled with spider webs. Right. And he hated going through the spider webs. And I saw him a few weeks later and I said, so how are you doing with spiders? He said, I hate them. I said, wait a minute, we cleared it. He said, oh, I don't mind the webs anymore. He said, I just hate the way they walk. It just drives me nuts. I said, well, we can work on that. He's like, no, that's fine. That's fine. So
I don't want to begin to like that.
But the fact that it came down a little bit, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it stays the same, and sometimes it goes down. So it all depends. Kevin, did you have any response at all?
I was very focused on Bryant and thinking about his situation. I probably feel a little better. I mean, it's not my issue, obviously, but what did you say it was that before you said it was?
It's called borrowing benefits.
Borrowing benefits, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but yeah, probably feel a little better.
Yeah. And Brian, you may notice in the next like 24 hours that there may be an energy shift as well, because sometimes it happens a little bit later. But thank you for being a volunteer.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm glad I was able to share that information, right? Because I know that there's people out there. That's one of the things my cardiologist said to me. He said, I'm glad you went to the ER when you did, because so many people will experience something like this and they'll just ignore it. And then, you know, they decide a couple of days later after talking with friends or family, they should go to the doctor, and then the evidence is gone. Yeah. So, you know, you need to pay attention to stuff. It is not normal for you at any time, unless you're being choked out, right? And somebody is intentionally making it feel like the lights are going out. That's not normal for that to happen anytime. So, you know, if you experience something like that, please get it checked out. And I'll be happy to share what I find out.
Yeah, please do. Now, I'm just curious, what was your water intake on each of those days?
So that's one of the, I felt like it was enough. And I'm somewhat concerned that it might have actually been too much. And one of the things that I've started doing differently is I drink a lot of water when I'm working out. And I had gone to a rowing class that morning and rowed about 10,000 meters. And so I perspired. Well, no, that wasn't even perspiring. That was just downright sweating a lot during that. And I'd probably drink close to 32 ounces of water during that class. And, the concern was, am I flushing the electrolytes out of my system? Am I putting too much water in? But the blood test didn't show that. However, I also know that, we as people are our own individual animals, and our bodies will adjust to different things. So what the medical community says is the green might not be my green, and so the results that they had the other day might be in the green, but maybe my normal is, a little bit higher than that.
Right.
And so what I have started doing is adding some, some of these different electrolyte supplements to some water, and taking in some of that before I go work out, and while I'm working out, that's in the water. So I'm not, because I know that's been a big problem before. That was actually a big problem in the military years ago, where they were, I forget the name of it, but it's there's a term for it. You're basically giving yourself too much water, and you're flushing all the electrolytes out of your system. And oftentimes people, it kind of presents as like heat stroke. So what do? They give you more water, and you're just exacerbating the problem. So I honestly don't think it was a hydration problem, but it may have been an electrolyte problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just curious. Well, I'm sorry you experienced that, and I hope that you find the cause of it soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I'll give you some feedback. If I feel like I'm, it's different as far as the way I'm thinking and feeling about it tomorrow. I'll definitely give you some feedback.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
I have a question for you. Actually, a couple questions for you, I think. So I consider math to be kind of I divide much of the world into hard science and soft science.
Okay.
So the math is the hard science world. And what you're doing now with EFT is more of the softer science. And typically people who are in one camp don't necessarily cross over into the other camp. And I heard you say why you wanted to help students out, get over some of these fears, but it's kind of unusual, and it attracted my interest. And so could you explain that a little bit in your case?
Kevin, I wish I could, but let me try.
Okay.
So, as a mathematician, I'm
Right.
interested in finding solutions.
Right.
And when I find solutions that don't work, I keep searching.
Okay.
All the solutions that I'd seen before were just not working. They would, when I first started this and encountered so many students that were terrified. I mean, it was way beyond fear. It was absolute terror of math, which I couldn't understand. At first, I would just ask questions and listen, and almost every one of them ended up telling me one of two things, if not both. One was that someone told them that they were no good at math. A teacher, a parent, a sibling, a friend, somebody who was an emotional wizard, I call them emotional wizards, people that they had a lot of respect for, had told them they were no good at math. Or they had told them that math was difficult. And so sometimes I would talk with students and I'd get that out, and I would just start asking questions like, well, was that person ever wrong about anything else? Or I was trying to get them to see things logically, right? And sometimes it would work. Most of the times it wouldn't. And I couldn't figure out why, because I'm a very logical person and I just want to get things, all lined up and ready to go. And what I knew was not working. But working and looking for a solution, I was like, well, we're going to have to figure out something else. We talked earlier about some of the books we read, and I do a lot of self-development. And I thought, well, maybe it is emotional. I don't know why would it? And some of the books are Your Body Believes Every Word That You Hear, every word that you say. And as the more I started reading about that, I thought, well, maybe there is something to it. And then when I saw the tapping solution, and I had nothing else. So I was just trying all kinds of things. My dissertation was in teaching students metacognition, teaching them things like, well, stop and think, where are you studying? Are you better studying in bright lights or in dim? Are you better studying quiet or loud noise? Just thinking about how do you think the best? And you can talk to a student about that and they can make logical conclusions about it. But if they have this internal fear and anxiety about math where they don't even feel good about trying anything, they're not even going to do that. They're not even going to pay attention to what you have to say to them. So I guess that's probably the best answer I can give you.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's interesting though, because what you first said about the comments that people may have said to them at some time about them not being good at math or whatever, those are all things that land in their imprinted mindset, and
Right.
they're walking around believing those things because somebody of credibility to them told them that,
Right.
and then they're reinforcing in their own mind. Yeah. Now I've also, and I'm kind of branching out into the EFT, the tapping. I've heard it referred to as like needleless acupuncture, because you're kind of addressing some of the same points. So, and certainly I've never actually done acupuncture, but I know people have had, and they say it's very effective.
Yeah, I've done acupuncture. I enjoyed it. And you're right. It is tapping on, actually the gentleman who designed tapping, Gary Craig, was a graduate of Stanford University in electrical engineering. And he saw these meridians, these energy pathways from traditional Chinese medicine as electrical circuits. And he said, if you look at them as electrical circuits, there are certain points where they intersect and you can get 96 to 98% of the circuitry of the meridians that you can tap on them. And so that's how he designed tapping. He did all this in the 90s, put everything out on the internet for free. And that's where Nick Ortner found it and said, wait a minute, this is like pretty cool stuff. And he created his movie and his summit and has gone on to help really spread the word. And I'm so glad he has. But you're right. It is like needleless acupuncture. Mm-hmm.
Gotta be, I would imagine, and you would appreciate this more than most just because of your level of education, but it's got to be peer-reviewed data out there on how this works. Funny I should ask, right?
Funny you should ask. So there's lots of information, including Dr. Peter Stapleton out of Australia has done an entire book on the science of tapping. And what they have found is that clinical studies done around the world has found that tapping is as effective as another modality called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprogramming, and more effective than cognitive behavior therapy, which is talk therapy. They have done clinical studies and found that because EMDR and EFT are more effective, when you go to a clinician about that, the incidences don't reoccur. Whereas with cognitive behavior therapy, things do come up. I was with a counselor for 4 years, once a week, until we both felt like, I had progressed to where I wanted to be. And as I was going out the door, he said, "Oh, Katie, there's one more thing." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "You may have those same emotions coming up again." And I backed up and I said, "Wait a minute, I thought we were all done with this." And he said, "No, if you're in similar situations, those emotions may arise." And he was right. They did arise when similar setups came up. And that's because my amygdala, my lizard brain in the back of my skull, was trying to keep me safe. And in the process of working to keep me safe, what it was doing was recognizing whenever I had a situation that was similar to some place that may have not been safe. And that's the beauty about tapping, is that once you clear something, so instead of being at a 3, 4, 5, like it is for Bryant, that when you focus in on what it is and you get it down to a 0, the clinical studies show it will not reoccur on that particular issue. So yeah,
Nice.
they've done a lot of studies.
So, and I can understand. I don't know basically anything about it except what I've heard today. So, but I can understand how going through this would, I don't even know what the right language is, disrupt or interrupt or cause your brain to process differently as you're going through these statements and you're tapping these critical areas, how they would cause you to almost like reinterpret. But here's my real question. Back to math, because this is immediately what I thought of. There are some people who just aren't good at math, and you can tap all day and they're still not going to be good at math. Now you may you may remove the fear of it or have them interpret it differently, but everybody has predispositions. And so some people are just not predisposed. And so you're not saying that tapping is going to make you a great mathematician, right? You're just saying that it's
Well,
Your eye roll was a little telling.
one of my careers I had is I bought a franchise called the Kumon franchise, Kumon, and it's from Japan, and it's a math tutoring franchise. And I worked with 2-year-olds to adults. I worked with developmentally delayed people to gifted people. And I found that following certain regimens that students could increase their math ability. So I do believe that everyone can learn math. Now, does everyone need to know calculus or differential equations? Maybe not. But gosh, I hate for them to miss out on the fun of it. So I don't know.
okay.
Yeah,
All
that,
right.
that Kumon franchise, there's one of those here locally.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to see if you are, I believe you. Yes. I believe that. And, people can, once they make their mind up to do something, they can become probably as good as anybody.
Yeah.
But they don't have the predisposition to be good at it. They're not just genetically, some people are genetically short and some people are genetically tall, and the short person can tap all they want. They're not going to get tall. You know what I mean? And so there's got to be some of that going on, but it can remove their feeling bad about being tall. Or
They
being
can
short.
think they're tall.
Right.
I know some people like that.
They can identify as being tall, I'm sure.
I think that I think you have a bit of a point, Kevin, that there are some people who are developmentally delayed and will not have the capacity to be able to do things that we take for granted. But for the general public, I believe that they can learn as much math as they want. I think for people that that don't have the capabilities, but I think those are more in the minority than not.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and we're guilty, I think, as parents of falling into that imprinting mindset on our children when we, have a child that maybe is struggling in math, and I know that I've done this because math was something that kicked my ass on a regular basis, and I'm sure I don't remember exactly how I said it, but I absolutely know at some point in my daughter's lives when they were dealing with math, talked about, you need to check with your mom on that because I completely suck at math. So, I think that, we have a tendency sometimes to share information about ourselves, and then, our kids think, oh, well, if dad's like that, then that's my problem. He sucks at math, so that genetically that's, he gave me those genes, and I suck at math too.
Yeah.
Which isn't the case.
Right. Because people are individuals. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it happens. Parents will do that all the time.
Oh yeah.
I laugh. I had a coaching client years ago that his mom used to tell him all the time, save his money for a rainy day. Save his money for a rainy day.
Good idea.
Every time it rained, he wanted to go shopping. I shit you not. I mean, he's like, I have this overwhelming desire to go shopping every time it rains and spend money because I've been saving it for a rainy day.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, and then we were able to talk about, well, what else was imprinted in your mindset that might be limiting you? And
Yeah.
So.
Now the difference, Bryant, is that as you work with coaching clients and as you're talking your way through this, that it may take a while to do this, but I've worked with clients. I had one client who was, I have to let you know that every story I tell you about a client has been approved by the client for me to share. But this one client was a friend of mine, and she said, Katie, I just want to tap with you because I need help to focus. I'm like, okay, fill out this form so I have some idea of what we're doing. And so it's a discovery form, right? So I know what's going on. I got the discovery form back and I saw that she had been suicidal. She was on 2 antidepressants and she was clinically depressed and seeing a therapist right now. And I went to my friend, I said, I can't work with you. I'm a mathematician,
right.
And she's like, no, Katie, you don't understand. I just want to learn how to focus. Well, I've done this long enough to know that when there's one thing that you want to do, is there's usually something back here that is keeping you from doing it. And I know I wasn't qualified to do it. Now, every certified practitioner has to have a mentor, a supervisor that you work with. So I went to my mentor, my supervisor, and I said, this is what's going on. And she said, you're absolutely right, Katie, do not go anywhere near it. Well, my friend was persistent and finally came up to me and said, look, I talked to my therapist. My therapist thought that tapping would be a good idea. So I went back to my mentor and I said, okay, the therapist approved. And my supervisor said, well, as long as the therapist has approved and knows what's going on, then that's okay. So we worked and we did 1 hour of tapping once a month. And for 6 months, so we just did 6 sessions. That was it. Her focus continued to increase. She was able to get lots more done during her work day. And I thought, okay, we're doing great because she was a friend of mine, we were talking, right? And as she was talking one day, she said, yeah, I went for a walk the other day with my friend who used to be my therapist. And I was like, stop, what do you mean? Used to be your therapist, what's going on? She said, I told you. I said, no, you never told me. What's going on? She said, well, I'm not off all my antidepressants. I said, no, you never told me that. But that one session, she'd been going to a therapist for years. And the tapping had helped her uncover and clear a lot of stuff that she hadn't been able to clear, with her therapist. So yeah, she was able to get off both antidepressants, and she did it in conjunction. I mean, her therapist worked with her, and apparently after 5 months, her therapist said, you know, you're doing great, you're fine, and she wasn't depressed anymore. So yeah.
There you go.
That's
I
very
mean,
cool.
even if that was the only person you helped in your whole life, that'd probably be enough right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get a chance to do things like I worked with a high school student who had done her SATs, her Scholastic Aptitude Test. That's a national test that many colleges look at to determine, you know, whether a student is right to attend their higher institution. And she had scored well. She would definitely be able to get into any one of the schools that she had applied for, but she felt like she could do better, and some scholarships were kind of in the wing and they were dependent on her score. So she applied for and took it a second time and studied every day really hard, wanted to do really, really well. She took the test, she got the scores back, and her scores had gone down from her first time. So she said, I know I can do this. I know I can do this. She registered and paid for a third time, and then life got busy, right? You know, she had this and that and the other to go to and tend to. And when she realized that Sunday that the SAT was going to be the following Saturday, she panicked. And she said, I haven't studied. I don't know what I'm going to do. I really got to do well. So her mother hired me, and we did 1 hour tapping on a Monday, another on a Wednesday, another one on a Friday. She retook it for the third time, her SATs, and her scores went up by 90 points from the first time, which is a significant jump. And she would tell you, she would attribute it to the tapping. And during tapping, do you think we talked about math or testing? No, we talked about everything else in the world that was going on with her life. And that's what happens when we get stressed, right? And stress is the cause of like 80% of the medical visits that we go into. And the trigger for so many of our chronic illnesses. But when we get stressed, what happens? The sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and we go into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. And all of our oxygen, our blood goes to our large muscle groups, goes to our, our legs, and takes away oxygen and blood from our brain and from our stomach. And we can't think. So learning how to manage, control, and eliminate your stress allows you to get back into your parasympathetic or your rest and digest mode, so that you can make intelligent decisions, so that you can think. And when you think about the world today, and especially in America, how so many people are stressed to the hilt, right? 2 years of quarantines and all the bickering back and forth about all this other stuff. All of that stress is actually reducing our immune system, which means it's making us sicker. And being able to know how to manage and eliminate your stress can make such a difference in our individual lives, and our family lives, our community, and our country. Can you tell I'm passionate about this?
Yeah.
Maybe just a little bit. No, it's awesome, man. Awesome information that you're sharing, and we greatly appreciate it.
I want to ask a deep question. This is my last deep question. What is your fundamental belief about people?
Fundamentally, I believe everybody is good. And because people have free will, a lot of people do stupid things.
Okay. How about cognitively, in the cognitive realm, since that's what we're talking about here?
Cognitively, people can learn what they're interested in. I've seen people, I had a friend who went to school to become an interior decorator, and she was a great interior decorator. And she became an interior decorator for one and only one reason, because she wanted to make sure she didn't take any math classes. And she was an interior decorator for a while, and then she realized a lot of what she was doing was psychology. So she wanted to go back and become a psychologist. Now, when you want to become a psychologist, and she wanted to get a Ph.D. psychology, there are a couple of math classes. And because she had that desire in her heart so much, she was able to figure out and get through her math. And I've seen that happen time and time again, where somebody wanted to be a nurse, or somebody wanted to be a welder, or somebody wanted to do something that somebody else said, you can't do this. And they were able to do it.
Okay. There you go. And
That was an outstanding answer.
yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah, it's neat to learn about stuff that, you're just not exposed to. There's a whole bunch of it. There's a statement I say all the time, the older I get, the less I know. And
Oh, yeah, true.
and I say that because I just learn how much of the world is out there that I've just never been exposed to before. And as your aperture opens and you realize more and more and more how much is out there, you just feel like I don't know anything. And this
Right.
is, for me, this is another one of those times. So the
I
older
feel that
get-
way too.
Yeah.
Nice.
So how do we direct people to you, or how do you want to get people directed to you as a result of what you're up to and your willingness to share some of your time with us and
Yeah.
expose us to this? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how people can
Well,
get in touch
thank
with
you
you?
for asking. Yeah, I'm a bit of a wordsmith. My last name is Nall, Nall.
Mm-hmm.
So my website is my last name followed by the word edge, EDGE, and then CO for company. So it becomes Knowledge Company, NALLEDGECO.com is my website. They can email me at hello@drnall.com, HELLO@DRNALL.com. And I would challenge your listeners to call me. I'd love to have a conversation with them. My phone number is area code 772-226-0167. So few people call me. I would love to hear from you.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
putting it out there.
Yeah, no doubt.
there we
That
go.
is putting it out there. And I love what you did with the knowledge. That is very clever. It does two things, right? So it puts it out there what your intent is, and it also makes sure people don't wonder, well, how do you pronounce her last name? Is it Nall? Is it Now?
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And I'm on all the social media. All they have to look for is Katie Nall, Ph.D. So it's KATIENALL PhD. And so that's where I am on all the social media. Mhm.
Good stuff.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, good stuff. And I have a personal belief that a lot of the ancient Chinese approaches to life, the oldest civilization, right? And I think recorded history anyway. They had a lot of stuff figured out long before any of us modern day came along. And I think there's some really good, a lot of goodness in that. And it sounds like this is kind of based on some of that. Is that right? Or it's
You're absolutely right. This is
Okay.
based on traditional Chinese medicine. I'm also an instructor for Qigong, which is the oldest exercise program out there. I think it's like 8,000 years old or something. And all the other like Tai Chi, Kung Fu, acupuncture, tapping, all of it derives out of Qigong, which is an amazing exercise program. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of Oriental wisdom that we dismiss without really investigation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
It definitely works.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was laughing to myself when you were talking. How do you pronounce it? Is it Qigong?
Uh-huh.
How many years ago?
I think like 8,000 years
Yeah,
old.
I was thinking, so that was a couple years before the Jane Fonda workout.
Was it 2 years or 3?
Jane is still going, man. It's working for her. She
Yeah.
is. She's still doing it. So
God bless her.
yeah,
Yeah.
God bless her indeed. Yeah.
I don't know why that popped into my head, but it did. And I just felt the need to share it.
Something from your childhood. There you go. I bet you had that tape. I bet you played it and watched it.
Oh, I still have it.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Probably
No,
the original.
No, I don't.
Yeah, I remember
Original.
the headband and the knee covers and the whole thing.
No, that was Olivia Newton-John in Let's Get
Oh.
Physical. That's what
Okay.
I remember. Wow, pulled that one right out of.
Yeah, we could get off on a whole
Right.
different subject area with Jane Fonda, so I don't want to go too far into that.
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, anyway, Katie, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing this with our audience. And I learned something, and I believe there's something to it. I do.
Yeah, I
Well-
agree. And thank you very much. And I will definitely give you some feedback over the next day or so should things change.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
Kevin and Bryant, thank you so much for being a guest on your amazing podcast that's been around for so long. I'm very impressed with your tenacity and persistence. So, and quality. Great podcast, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
those kind words.
Yeah.
All right. You know what I got to do now,
do
Kevin?
your thing over there.
I got to
Do
reach
your
over
thing.
here and hit this button.
That's right. Did you hit the right one?
I did. And now I'm going to say something like this. No matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.